Since my last debrief, I came out with a Late Night Saga Melee, the first of many that I have in mind. This is intended to be a shorter project than the other Late Night Saga entries, just to keep something coming out in between projects. Another project that I've been working on in between sagas is something I touched upon last time, what I'm calling the Tom Snyder Project. While researching Three's a Crowd, I found that unlike other late night talk shows of the era, Tomorrow with Tom Snyder did not have a comprehensive episode guide listing guest stars and air dates. Nor is the show available to view anywhere except YouTube, where a handful of clips and occasionally whole episodes have been uploaded by fans. I started the long task of creating a complete episode guide with the ultimate goal of creating a website that would have links to all the videos that are found on YouTube, or at least point to official DVD releases where they can be found. The first stop on my journey was a website called TV.com, which had a guide with information on about 70% of tomorrow's air dates. I also noted shortly after I found it that another website called Metacritic had an identical list. Discovering that both websites were owned by CNET, which was in turn bought out by CBS Interactive, I assumed the lists were in fact the same list. Since TV.com was much easier to scroll through than Metacritic, where I had to click on each episode one at a time, I went through TV.com first, copying all their descriptions into a spreadsheet. At first, instead of copying and pasting each blurb, I simply rewrote a shorter version, and now I wish I had copied the whole thing for the sake of thoroughness. This was 8 or 9 months ago, and when I went back recently to correct this oversight, I found that the episode guide is no longer available on that website. This is part of why I'm trying to copy all of this information into my own personal database, because things found on the internet can be, as they say, ephemeral. They do not last. CBS recently sold CNET and its assets to Red Ventures, who probably saw fit to delete this old episode guide that gets little to no traffic and is just taking up space. Or they lost it in the move. My query on their Facebook page went unanswered and was deleted. TV.com's official contact email returned a delivery failure error. So I have paused my other efforts on this project for the time being, while I now pull all the listings from Metacritic before they vanish as well. I should have gone through their list in the first place because, as I see now, while they are mostly identical, there are occasional differences. But I do feel good that at some point when I was capturing TV.com's information, I did start copying and pasting instead of rewriting, so I have most of it in its original form. TV.com had started out as the TV Tome, a website for fan-submitted episode guides like the one I am building. So even if Red Ventures has deleted their work, I have a copy of it that I can one day preserve.
You're almost the only evidence that I exist.
As I said, TV.com had about 70% of the air dates accounted for, so to fill in the rest, I initially thought of consulting TV Guide. For those of you who are too young to remember, TV Guide was a weekly print magazine which listed all the TV shows coming up for the following week.
It's TV Guide, America's favorite television magazine.
But when I went to tvguide.com, I found they only had an archive of old covers, not old program listings. I thought this was because they simply didn't care to host them. Looking a little more deeply, it turns out that the TV Guide company was at one point bought out by the Preview channel, an old cable channel that existed before digital menus, that featured a scroll of shows that were currently on your cable system. They changed their name to the TV Guide channel and started focusing more on the shows running on the top half of the screen. They eventually ditched the channel listings, changed their name to Pop, and sold off the magazine. TV Guide was eventually bought by, you guessed it, Red Ventures, who still own the rights to the name TV Guide on television and on the website. The magazine, which is still published, owns the magazine content, but maybe they just can't put it online. Since TV Guide had failed me, I started looking for websites where I could look at newspapers' TV inserts. Most were behind a paywall, and I thought I would see how much I could find for free before I took that leap. I went to my local library where I looked through the microfilm for the first time in years. I was starting to make some progress when COVID struck and closed my library. I found a few newspaper websites that were free to view. First a pair in Texas, and then a pair in Colorado. The most common problem was that these papers were from such small towns with small papers that some of them only ran for a year or two before they stopped printing the TV listing. One of the papers even claimed they had to stop doing the TV insert because their town ran out of newsprint. Now that I knew that the online papers had what I needed, I decided to take the plunge and sign up for newspapers.com, a website that archives thousands of newspapers from around the country. I went right to the source, the Los Angeles Times, which I figured would have the most comprehensive listing, and although the first few months had relatively few, after that, it's pretty complete. I started this project almost exactly 1 year ago, and as it currently stands, I have information from at least one source for 95% of all possible air dates. I have information confirmed by 2 or more sources for 61% of all air dates, or 1,057 shows out of about 1,740. I've also pulled almost 4,000 minutes of video from YouTube, Vimeo, Dailymotion, Facebook, and official DVD releases of The Tomorrow Show, bootlegs, and DVD special features from other films and documentaries. I check back on YouTube a couple times a month to see if anything new has been added, and I'm sure things are also being taken off from time to time, which is why I'm capturing it all. None of which changes the fact that even when I get 100% of air dates with information from 2 or more matching sources, it will still only be a complete guide of what was supposed to air, not what actually did air. Sometimes guest bookings were changed the same day the program was taped and aired, so even the daily newspaper listings which were printed the night before will be wrong.
This morning, a woman who is pregnant by artificial insemination, who was going to be here to talk about what her hopes were and why she went through the process and all the ramifications, called up and said, she doesn't feel well or she doesn't want to do it or whatever the reason. What was it? Her husband didn't want her to do it. Okay, we understand. But now here we are at 10 o'clock in the morning, about 8 hours away from airtime in New York, tape time in New York. What are you going to do? So we pull this whole show apart tonight to try and put on something that all of you will watch because it's late and we appreciate the business.
In order to find out what actually did air, I would not only have to have the show itself, but hopefully also have Tom actually mention the date on air.
This is our Halloween special from New York, and have we got a show for you tonight?
Failing that, I would need confirmation from someone who did have the show in hand, such as one of the many television museums around the country, like the Paley Center for Media, who have many episodes of Tomorrow available for viewing at their facility, which they will not license out or put online. They do have a searchable database, which has a very detailed summation of episodes in their collection. I also found Archival TV Audio, a site which sells audio-only recordings of old TV shows. Since they presumably have the shows in hand, their summations should also be accurate. But look at this example.
Tomorrow night we had advertised that Monty Hall was going to be on the air. We taped the show last Friday night here in New York to accommodate Mr. Hall's schedule. We're not going to run that show. We're going to run instead the regular show that we're going to do here tomorrow night with Larry Flint, the publisher of Hustler magazine. The Monty Hall program will appear on Thursday night, the 10th of March, that week, which is the week of March the 6th. Why am I going into all of this? It's a vacation week. We're not going to be here, and all the shows are going to be on tape.
The Monty Hall appearance actually got pushed back to March 10th. All of my sources have it listed on the 24th. Even Archival TV Audio, which says they have the show in hand. And yes, I see it says the 25th, but that's because Archival TV Audio lists the Tomorrow Show as airing Tuesday through Friday morning, instead of Monday through Thursday night, which is correct by the 24-hour clock, but annoying when trying to use them to confirm other listings. So with the one-day offset, they still list Monty Hall on the 24th, and also list his rebooking on March 10th, which is probably because they came into possession of these audio recordings and only had online TV listings to tell them what dates they originally aired, and some of them were wrong.
I know there is nothing more disturbing than to read in the listings in the paper or the magazines. There's something that's going to be on, you want to watch it, and then it doesn't come on, and you say, well, what are those people doing? It's been a terrible week, and I'm sorry if the listings aren't right.
Hopefully by the time this project reaches its 2nd anniversary, I will have completed the episode guide to my satisfaction and started working on the website. Until next time, another Late Night Saga Melee is in the works, and as always, the Late Night War Part 1 continues production.